Did you get your refill there, Moose?
I did. Hopefully no technical difficulties this time.
Yeah, you should have put hopefully on there.
Right.
It made it seem like a guarantee.
I am guaranteeing no technical difficulties.
Hope you don't Jerry Maguire though. Words are not as strong as a.
Yep. Let's go live. All right, everybody, we are back. If you hopefully have migrated over from the old link, we're going to start the show over, so be a little bit of some repeat info. Again, welcome to the Bucking Hangover, episode 14, I think, for us. The end-of-year review. We'll go over weeks 15, 16, and 17. As we always do, we will debate should we sign or tag or get rid of Jameis and a few other key players. And then, of course, get ready for the offseason. I'll let you know what the schedule's going to look like. Before we get started, of course, as we always do, let's hit that intro.
Touchdowns, Tampa Bay, fire those cannons. Oh, my.
All right, everybody, good evening. Once again, it's your host, Moose, with the Bucking Hangover. Bringing a close to the 2019 NFL regular season, at least for the Buccaneers. Of course, finishing the season 7-9. No playoffs for us this year. But before we get going, let's bring in our technical difficulties free partner now. MRod is here. Hopefully without the freezing. Let's see how that goes.
Feels good not to freeze.
Feels good. So you're rocking the Oilers jersey.
Yeah, it was the closest thing I could find, a Tennessee Titans jersey. Celebrating their win here against the Patriots. And I was just looking here online, and it looks like they gave the Patriots being eliminated the Titanic music. So
Already?
Already.
Oh man!
Internet wastes no time.
No time wasted for the internet. I'll have to watch that and see Tom. Did they do it to the pick six? What did they do it to?
I didn't watch it. I just see the link here. It says that the Patriots being eliminated gets that Titanic music. So I'll be clicking on that here shortly after the show.
Yeah, we'll have to watch it after the show. Again, everybody, welcome to the Bucking Hangover, your source for post Buccaneers analysis and joint crying and therapy session, if you will.
And this is a spoiler alert, but the Bucs are not in the playoffs, as we all know.
Yeah, just in case you were wondering back in week 2 if we were going to make the playoffs this year, and you've skipped a couple episodes of the Bucking Hangover and you're on a different planet, or you're listening to us in Europe or something for some reason. Fortunately, the Bucs didn't make the playoffs. I'm really sorry about that, especially if you're a big Glazers family fan in England, because they own Manchester United, who they've also found a way to make also a mediocre soccer team now in Europe. Sorry, welcome to the Buccaneers family. We're also a mediocre football team here in the United States.
Hey, Glazers are consistent.
Yeah, they definitely can get the right on-field product to have a mediocre team.
But going back to what we were saying before we were cut off our last show, the last time the Bucs made the playoffs was 2007, and we didn't know who the quarterback was, but now we do, and it was actually Jeff Garcia. He actually led us to the playoff win there. With a 9-7 record, the Bucs lost the last 2 games in the year and still was able to slide into the playoffs. So
does that mean that the Chris Sims game was before 2007? Because that's when we lost to the Redskins, right? Weren't we like the 3 seed and then we lost to the Redskins?
I want to say Sims.
Is that a false memory?
Sims was probably 06. Now you say
maybe
that,
it was the year before, right? And then we brought in Jeff
Garcia. Yeah, I want to say I want to say we brought in Garcia after Sims. I want to say Sims was like 05, 06. I remember being like fresh out of high school when Sims was the quarterback.
Right, and I remember it's like, oh man, the Bucs won the division. We're the 3 seed. We get to play the Redskins, who barely made the playoffs, and then of course we lose to the Redskins at home, and then the 9-7 season. Who do we lose to with Jeff Garcia
in the playoffs?
Yeah,
not too sure.
Man, go back. Was the Giants, wasn't it? Is that a Giants loss? That 9-7 season was brutal because weren't we like 9-5 at some point?
Yeah, that was the Giants' loss.
Right. Yeah, that was the Giants. All right, well, let's not go back down memory lane too far and age ourselves, and we'll get right at it, talking about the end of the 2019 Buccaneers season. A very big, depressing thud of an ending for our boys in red and pewter, unfortunately. You'll see our Twitter handles up top, at $10 Sports for me, at Balls Brews Bros for MRod. We're both pretty active on Twitter, so make sure to add us and follow us and interact with us there. And of course, like you're doing right now, if you're watching us live, we'll either go live or do pre-recorded shows on YouTube of our live podcast, so you can always watch us on our channel at Balls, Brews, and Bros. You can search for. You can also search for the show names like the Bucking Hangover to be able to find our playlist for all 14 episodes that we have so far. Most excitedly, of course, you can find us on podcast platforms. That includes Apple, that includes Spotify, and your Google Podcasts, along with the new, I got to get the new logo on there, iHeartRadio was just approved for us as well. So if you're an iHeartRadio podcast user and like listening to us in the shower or working out or in the car or late at night to listen to the, so what do you call it? The, what candy?
I was saying, if you're in a mood for some dessert, I feel like Moose does provide you some audible candy right straight into your ear. Don't listen too much because you could get diabetes, but hey,
We'll have to check with the Surgeon General on that to see if that truly is a way to get diabetes, but we'll get back to you on that. So let's jump right in. Let's talk a little bit about the Falcons game. I didn't want to show stats from all the other games. A big focus on Atlanta. I think we'll jump to the screen. Actually, you know what? Let's start with the Lions game. Let's jump to the second screen here, MRod. And we're both here on screen. We got some of the stats here in the middle. A brief rundown. Really a big game for the Buccaneers. A game that we felt, we finally played like the way we should have played against a bad team, thoroughly destroying them. And honestly, the Lions...
Third-string quarterback also.
Yeah, third-string quarterback. And it was, honestly, a great game. I think we could have seen... Jameis' completion percentage is always fun. But he did throw for 458 yards. I think he had two back-to-back games of over 400 yards, I think it was back-to-back over 400 yards. 4 touchdowns and the one complimentary interception that must occur every game. Rushing game, contract. Right? Yeah, the rushing game wasn't really much of a factor.
Rojo rusher, 11 carries, 23 yards.
As you'll see there, and then of course Godwin before he got injured. 5 for 121, and this is really where Brashad Perriman's glut of yards came in. Big 3 touchdown performance for him, and he played really well down the stretch, especially as he was forced to be the number 1 receiver with Chris Godwin going down in that game, and Mike Evans having gone down a week or two before. So, again, just a great performance for the Buccaneers. Sean Murphy-Bunting, I think... Was that the game he had a pick 6, or was that I think that was the pick 6 game for him. So I think he ended up the season with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So he came on strong, and I know we really were ripping the secondary a new one earlier in the season, but they really have come along, and we'll kind of summarize Bruce Arians' end of season kind of summary, if you will, where he talks a little bit about the defense, but this wasn't a game I wasn't able to watch too closely, mostly through highlights. Again, Red Zone really loves not showing the Buccaneers for whatever reason, but again, kind of a dominant performance, and honestly the closest that we got to a 500 record since we started off 0-0 at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, absolutely, and I was going back a little bit, backtracking a little bit to what you're saying. I mean, Brashad Perriman definitely stepped up because it was the first game that we did not have Mike Evans. So we needed someone to definitely step up. I mean, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were both 1,000-yard receivers. The way Brashad Perriman was started off the year, I was kind of very thinking we were in trouble a little bit. But no, he stepped it up. I mean, he stepped as number 2 receiver when needed to be, and he stepped up to number 1 when he was asked to do it. So definitely hats out to Brashad Perriman there. something that I found as disappointing was O.J. Howard. Given his receiving abilities and what we drafted him for and how we drafted him, he never stepped up as that receiving target that we needed. And defense secondary, started shaping up a little bit. Defense was playing really well. I mean, these last few weeks, I was very impressed by defense. Hopefully we can make some signings, keep some players here, and I think our defense future looks bright. I mean, like I said, Todd Bowles, when we first signed him, I was very excited because I knew he was going to turn around his defense pretty quickly. Going back, cut Vernon Hargreaves this year. He was playing. He moves on to the next round of the playoffs. So
yeah, ends up playing against us even. The next game of the season, a very disappointing loss against the Houston Texans. A game the Buccaneers should have won. I mean, have the Buccaneers won that game, we may not even be talking about the Texans winning that division. I mean, they could have been a difference maker. And you talked about how the defense has stepped up in the last half of the season. Absolutely. And this is case in point, holding Deshaun Watson to under 200 yards passing, holding them to under 60 yards rushing. They were under 300 yards of total offense, and we somehow found a way to lose that game. And we all know why. And
DeAndre Hopkins, 5 catches, 23 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, 23 yards that game.
Yep. It was Kenny Stills who was their leading receiver, and we found a way to throw that away. It's funny, they don't even have Jameis the number of interceptions he had here.
I know.
Was that 4 interceptions in that game? One of them being a pick six, and he almost threw his second. He had the second pick six back to back. Had they not called the guy down, I mean.
I don't think Google's able to. I think their numbers maxed out at 3.
Yeah.
So
if you're throwing,
they lost count.
Yeah, there's no accurate count there, but we have the accurate count right behind me. By the way, once I get to Moose Cam, you see we've kept track of the interception tracker. We made it to 30. I had to change the 2 out to a 3. That took. You don't know the amount of chalk that took to change that from a 2 to a 3. So we're so proud of you, Jameis, to get into that 30 interception mark.
30-30 club, man. It's a new club. He's the first person in it. It is a milestone for a lot of players to want to achieve, and I'd say he'll probably sit there by himself for a pretty long time.
And then I think case in point about O.J. Howard again, 3 for 46. I mean, not a bad showing, but we've talked about this year too that the tight ends are not maximized in Bruce Arians' system for whatever reason, or Byron Leftwich's system for whatever reason. I don't know if maybe that's something that needs to go back to the drawing board over the offseason and how we maximize using tight ends. But I think it's that Cameron Brate had some great games, though.
No, it's not even about maximizing tight ends. It's about, hey, you're down your number 1 and 2 receiver who had 1,000 yards. You have Perriman coming in here, and your next guys after Perriman are Watson, like Hyman, or whatever. I mean, and we all know O.J. Howard's a very talented receiver. I mean, utilize him as a receiver more. That's basically what I'm saying is, like, make this guy step it up and give Jameis Winston another weapon. I mean, we lost by 3 points in a game we should have won. We had 4 interceptions. I mean, this game is solely on Jameis Winston, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't argue that he didn't have a running game. I mean, our two-headed attack of Jones and Barber, almost 100 yards. Rashard Perriman, again, over 100 yards. Defense played well. I mean, we gave the Texans a short field most of the game. I mean, you're not. That's the problem we kept seeing. That and I want to see the end stat, and I'll have to do a little bit of research of what the average starting field position was for our opponents, because it had to be the average drive against us had to be 60 yards. I mean,
yeah, something like that
for touchdown drives. It had to be
at least 30 times.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable.
And the other thing you have here is you have another stat here where you have, I think our leading touchdown receiving was Mike Evans. I think he had like 11 or 10.
I think Godwin ended up with 9. 9 for him. Mike had 8.
Oh, Mike Evans had 8
Mike
touchdowns.
had 8 before he got injured.
And then our third leading receiver in touchdown that had 7 was not our guy, but it was the opposing defense.
Oh, that's right.
It was 7 pick sixes.
7 pick sixes, the most all time. So Jameis really threw for 40 touchdowns. I mean, I think we're understating the fact that he really made the 40-30 club.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to break it down that way.
If you add all the interception yardages, he might have thrown for 6,000 yards.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're really overstating that Jameis actually really should hold the yardage record for the NFL.
Absolutely.
So let's hop over to Atlanta, and I think we can get back to our regular cams now because we got the stats for Atlanta here. So game leaders, Jameis only throwing the ball 24 times, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions to get him to that 30-30, and just a hair over 200 yards, which was really disappointing.
I mean, given joining the 30-30 club, the way that game ended, could you say that could have been any better, any more Jameis way to end that season?
Oh, it's the most poetic way to end a season that I've ever seen. Just the walk-off pick six with his usual look of bewilderment and amazement at himself as, wow, did I really just do that? Couldn't have written that any better. And not just that, but the previous interception put us in a hairy position as well. And the fact that we couldn't put Atlanta away, and I think Atlanta's a different problem because you had Matt Gay missing 3 kicks. And I know we were arguing about this for the past week of, well, if Jameis just didn't throw a pick six in overtime, well, we wouldn't have to rely. No. Matt Gay missed 3 kicks. We wouldn't be in this position.
Yes,
Jameis wouldn't.
Yes, he did miss 3 kicks. You are right, but he did not lose the game for us. The thing that lost the game for us, that got us off the field, was Jameis Winston throwing a walk-off pick six. Yes, Matt Gay
but
gave
we're
us
not
that
there
adversity.
if Matt Gay makes 2 of those kicks. If Matt Gay makes 1 of those kicks, we're not talking about going to overtime.
Okay, well, I mean, you can say that about any game. Where the Giants game, he made like 4 for 5 or 3 for 4 in kicks. But if Jameis didn't turn it over that game, he wouldn't have had to make that kick there at the buzzer beater, and missed it.
Just saying, that's his job. His job is to make kicks.
Yeah, and Jameis Winston's job, I guess, is to throw pick sixes. So
only 7, all right? Only 7. That's less than 1 a game. So, I mean, Brashad Perriman again over 100 yards. 1 more touchdown. 5 on 134. Rojo had a great game at 11.
Nice.
106. Finally over 100 yards. And then, of course, Shaq Barrett breaking Warren Sapp's record of 16.5. The Shaq attack. Finishing up the season, I think, with 19.5 sacks, the highest ever in Buccaneer history. We got to find a way to sign him. And again, the defense played fairly
the NFL as well.
Defense played fairly well for the most part against the Falcons. Let's pull up the Falcons stats on this one. Held Julio Jones in check for the most part, under 100 yards, and Matt Ryan.
It's impressive to me holding him under 100. Week before holding DeAndre Hopkins to like not even under 30 yards. That's just very impressive to me.
Absolutely, and again, it speaks to our defense and how much we've improved. And I'm really excited for next year. And we'll talk about Bruce Arians' final press conference, of course, in a moment, where he's really not concerned about our defense. He knows that that's something we're going to be able to depend on, and as long as we can keep most of our pieces that we have, I think it's going to be a great outcome for the Buccaneers. Talked a little bit about the Lions game. Really what was encouraging was, if Jameis plays all the time like he did against, even 80% of the time like he did against the Lions, I mean, the Buccaneers are potentially unstoppable and winning 13 games. And then you have if Perriman could play like he did the last quarter of the season, or even the last 4 or 5 games of the season, we for sure have the top receiving core in the league, if not already.
It's hard to get that many targets when you're the number 3 guy playing the slot when you have Evans and Godwin most of the time. But I get what you're saying there. But I mean, if Evans and Godwin just do what they did this year, next year, we'll be just fine.
And then, of course, the defense really stepping up. The secondary, watching them come into their own has been pretty amazing actually as a fan, especially giving them a hard time, really seeing them in person and against Seattle and just watching people get burned over and over and over. They've played really exceptionally well. They've forced some turnovers in key moments and at least keeping the offense in the game until they found a way to mess up the game, of course.
Yeah, which is hopefully just one more secondary player away from being an elite defense.
And then, of course, what went not so great was generally we talked briefly, the Texans and the Falcons game.
Why do I feel like 90% of times what did not go great is usually Jameis Winston?
I mean, he's the quarterback. I mean, if something doesn't go well, it's usually because your quarterback didn't get the job done. If you're not scoring, it's because your quarterback isn't getting the job done, and he's not getting the job done. He's on there all the time. He's on what went well as well, but most of the time he's also what went not so great. And actually, I needed to throw Matt Gay on here for the last the Falcons game because he deserves a little bit of blame for that.
Hey, he deserves blame, but I was arguing he's the best kicker we've had like in the past decade, and he's in the rookie season. So I still think we're looking bright with our kicker position. I think Matt Gay is going to only get better. And
we have his stats rolling down below. Actually, he made about 84% of his kicks, which is just a shame that you always remember the ones that you miss, so especially when they're in key moments or they end up costing a game. So yeah, there it is. About 85% of his
5
kicks.
Extra points. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, 5 extra points, and then 7 kicks, maybe?
I think most of the game earlier in the year, I want to say, I think he had like a good stretch in the middle of our season where he made most of his kicks.
Oh, he made everything. I think he missed one against the Rams, missed the infamous Giants one, and then these last 3, then he would miss a random extra point here and there, and that happens now with the kick being like a 40-yard field goal or whatever it is.
But overall, I think he had a good season. Man. I know that last game he missed 3 kicks, which was a big bummer. But I'm pretty happy about our kicker situation, and I think we have it figured out. We have that piece mostly solved because that's been something we've been struggling for the past 7 to 6 seasons. Given, I can't even name all the kickers we went through. Pat Murray.
We remember if you go back to like episode 2 or 3, we have the slide of all the kickers we've had in the last year. Maybe we got to revisit that.
Folk. I
was kicking for the Patriots now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, and maybe we just need to do a deeper dive. I don't know if the team's happy with the performance of our punter. I'd have to see where he ranks, I guess, among all punters in the NFL, but really only a 43-yard average on punts, which I feel is low. And again, I haven't done any crazy research into it to see where Bradley Pinion falls among all the other NFL punters, but I feel that 43 yards is not a game-changing number in terms of flopping field position when we need it to happen. So I don't know if that's somewhere we look for a different punter as well. Who knows? Just throwing that out there if we're really looking to improve stuff for everyone. But our usual NFC South standings, and it's the 49ers that end up with the number 1 seed overall. Yep. The road to Miami goes through San Francisco on the NFC side. Of course, no surprise, the Saints actually ending up with the 3 seed at 13-3 due to all the crazy tiebreakers that went on. A big season for the Saints. Not looking as dominant as they usually do. I think there's still a few question marks if they can hang with San Francisco, and I don't know. It blows my mind that Green Bay is the number 2 seed, and I just don't think they're that good. I don't know how they're 13-3. I think they're frauds, honestly. I think they're going to end up in the Super Bowl, but maybe. But I just don't think they're that great. I don't.
Well, they got kind of lucky. They beat the Chiefs when that was the game Mahomes was out, so they got a little lucky there. Got to play some teams that were a little bit shorthanded.
They struggled against the Redskins.
Mm-hmm. They lost. Who was their most recent loss to? Which we were all really surprised about it.
Oh, they got destroyed by the Chargers.
That's who it was. That's who it was.
I mean, that cost me my parlay and teaser that way. Like, it's like, oh, Packers at the Chargers. It was basically a home game in Los Angeles. Yeah, no problem. And they came out flat, and I think they only scored 11 points against the Chargers.
Yep, it was some. Yeah, it was definitely something like that. Yeah, I'm surprised too. But I mean, their schedule wasn't. I mean, week 1. I mean, they beat the Bears 10-3. That was the Mitch Trubisky I don't know what I'm doing game, which shouldn't have been that close. And then, I mean, they beat the Vikings week 2 by 5 points, beat the Broncos. Oh, wow, I did not notice this. They lost to the Eagles week 4.
Yeah, I'm pulling up their schedule now. I'm curious now to see where these losses happen.
They beat the Cowboys. They barely beat the Lions. They beat the Lions 23-22.
Yeah, I remember that one. They beat the Cowboys.
Beat the Raiders.
Yeah.
They got lucky against the Chiefs because that was Matt Moore played that whole game. They only won by a touchdown. I mean, beat Carolina, which we know the Carolina mess. Lost to the Chargers. We got blown away by the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, they looked like a different level there, and then they won out the rest of the season. But again, they didn't really play anyone.
But yeah, Giants, Redskins, Bears, Packers. I mean, beat the Vikings. That was an impressive win there. A much-needed win that they needed. But, yeah, I mean, their wins are not that impressive.
Oh, that's right. And they were losing to the Lions, I think, right? And then they had to come back and win last minute.
Yeah.
They were losing to the Lions at the end of the year.
It was a walk-off field goal by Matt. Yep.
By Crosby.
Yep. And they needed that win because, or else they would be the 3 seed and Saints would probably be the 2 seed.
Exactly. So I'm still not convinced that they're 2 seed, a traditional 2 seed. I guess we'll see. They'll definitely have the weather in their favor. They'll probably end up playing the Seahawks. So did they play? They played the Seahawks this year, right? No, I don't think they did.
No, not in the regular season.
So we'll see. That should be a pretty good matchup, and the Saints will probably. Oh, no, that's not true. They play the Saints.
I'd say they lose to whoever they play in this playoff game. Whoever they play, it doesn't matter. They play San Francisco. They play against Saints. Anybody they play, I think they'll lose that game.
Yeah, I think
the only advantage they have is they'll be in if they play the Saints. I think the Saints can pull it off, but the advantage they do have is Saints playing a dome, and this game's going to be in Lambeau Field, and you know the conditions that there's always in Lambeau Field in playoff time when it's like negative 60 degrees or some crazy thing like that. So that's the only advantage Green Bay has, and luckily they did get that that number 2 seed, and they got to claim that wild card there so they can play at home because or else they'd be in big trouble.
Right. So, of course, our NFC South standings, kind of sad about that. The Bucs ended up going down thanks to tiebreakers to 3rd place. So Falcons making a strong run at the end. It's funny. Most of the year we were making fun of the Falcons, and they end up above the Buccaneers in 2nd place due to the tiebreakers. Bucs 3rd. They'll end up playing the Rams and the Giants next year, I believe.
Yep.
As part of the finishing in the same position in the NFC. And I think we're playing the North next year, all the North teams for the NFC. And then Carolina really, since the firing of Ron Rivera, kind of hobbling into the 5-11 spot at the end of the season. Really no hope for them once they fired Ron Rivera, who has now been hired by the Redskins with Jack Del Rio, who I think automatically makes the Redskins a better team for next year without even adding any pieces. Not just that, and then they got rid of Bruce Allen, who is the worst GM of all time for, he spent time with the Buccaneers, as we know, in the early 2000s and really ruined our franchise for a little bit as well. So I'm kind of excited for the Redskins next year.
Yeah, I think they got the great coach, one of my favorite coaches in the league, so I'm pretty excited for them. Another thing I'm pretty excited for is, I know we congratulated Jameis Winston on making a 30-30 club. Another thing we need to congratulate is Moose over here. He is off the market, ladies, so if you're listening to him, you just got to give you a heads up. He is off the market. Moose is actually engaged as of January 1st.
That's right. Got it right there.
So congratulations, Moose.
Thank you.
She did say yes. Spoiler alert, she did say yes. Congratulations, Moose, there.
I appreciate it.
So, looking to have that coming this year. And, got some bachelor party. Will hopefully maybe be at a Bucs away game for a bachelor party this year.
Yeah, depending on the date, we're hoping. Bucs got a couple good opponents. Hopefully, that they end up at the next year. I read an article saying that, which I would be really sad if the Bucs ended up opening in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, you saw that because Gruden
Yep.
against the Buccaneers for his first home game in Las Vegas. I'm like, no, I don't want to pay $500 a ticket.
Exactly.
So I'm hoping that's
$500 for standing room only.
Yeah, for standing room only in the 600 section of the new Allegiant Stadium
with an obstructed view.
Oh man, but
so yeah, hopefully it'll be like a week 3 or 4 game. I mean, Denver's on the map too, and we talked about Chicago will be another place you'd be excited
Chicago too, or heck, even if it ends up being New Orleans again, New Orleans is always a good time. We'll make it a good time. So, what's next for the Buccaneers? Of course, season is officially over. Playing some golf off of Jameis's head, apparently. And then, of course, the big decisions that are coming up, mostly on the defensive side, as we get into free agency in March 2020. We'll, of course, fire up the show anytime there's some big Buccaneers news, and we'll kind of bring that to you in our comments on that. Don't expect we'll have much of a Bucking hangover until March, more than likely, once free agency starts kicking off, or if we start hearing a lot of rumors, we'll of course hop on and make a quick podcast or a quick video about that as well. So, kind of our hot topics to end the season, MRod. Injuries really got the best of us here towards the end of the season. The big ones, of course, to Mike and Chris Godwin. I mean, how much of a do you think that would have made any difference if we had him in where we finished, or do you think Jameis was going to play like Jameis anyways, and it wasn't even going to matter?
I mean, that's a tough one to say. I mean, Jameis did build amazing chemistry with them. He started building it with Perriman towards the end. Could have we won that Texas game if one of those two guys were there? It's hard to say. I mean, it is a whole new weapon. It does change how the defense has to plan for those guys versus Perriman and some, practice squad receivers or whatnot. So, I mean, would it make a difference? No, probably not. Maybe we would have been able to get one more win out of it about it. But regardless, I mean, at least we got a better draft spot, and we weren't going to make the playoffs regardless. So they get to get healthy. We get a better draft spot. So it was a win-win situation.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. It would have been nice to see. I think both of them ended up over 1,000 yards receiving anyway. But I mean, I think Chris Godwin, with 3 games to go, I mean, I think he was in 1250s. Could have ended up a 1,500 yard receiver, which would have been nice to see. Of course, I think one of the big comments we heard over the past week as the Buccaneers were doing their exit interviews, and of course Bruce Arians getting ready for the off season. He was a little bit more honest than usual about who should be quarterbacking the Buccaneers, or who his preference was. How did you kind of read those comments?
Yeah, like he said, I mean, he believes the Bucs could win with another quarterback other than Jameis Winston. So I don't know if he's starting to plant the seeds there. Let us know, hey, we're bringing somebody else in. The other thing he said is if they had a valuable second-string quarterback, that Jameis Winston probably would have been benched a couple games too, which he was referring to mainly Blaine Gabbert, who we lost. What there was it like during the preseason?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's going to be a little bit of interesting to go into this off season because 2 weeks ago after the Lions game, everybody was all like, "Oh yeah, we're signing Jameis Winston. That's a new quarterback. We're going to roll with him." But after these past 2 games he played and the way Bruce Arians' comments were, I really don't know. I can't tell you if we're going to sign Jameis Winston or not. I would probably say more than likely probably would, but I have no clue.
See, I don't know. I don't know how to take those comments. I don't know if it's just Bruce giving lip service to the media and trying to get conversations going. I don't know. He did say
that he's known that Winston is nearsighted.
Oh, great!
So he'll get some glasses.
No, but nearsighted doesn't explain why he can't see linebackers. Nearsighted would explain that he could see the linebackers and was throwing picks down the field. But I don't know. Maybe the linebackers know what his specific range is, and that's why they live in that That sounds like Bill Belichick type of coaching there. He would know the exact range of where his eyesight is limited. And
it's
that's
Winston's twilight zone.
Yeah. But, reading some stats, his down the field accuracy improved dramatically. Like, it was a statistically significant amount where I think he led the NFL in completions of 20 or more yards, like ball in the air yards. Not even that it was like a dump and then they ran 18 yards or anything. It was like the ball traveled 20 yards and it was a completion. So his down the field accuracy has improved greatly. He's hitting people in stride more often than not. But
interceptions.
The interceptions in that 5 to 12 yard box area are killing the team and killing him and his statistics. I don't know how to read Bruce's comments. I mean, I don't know if it's some weird way to motivate him or maybe he was just being brutally honest and he doesn't want Jameis Winston. I mean, we've been going back and forth on statistics, and at first I kind of laughed at the Peyton Manning comparisons, but statistically he is equal or slightly better than Peyton Manning where he was over this first 5 years. And I don't know. I will point to the stats, and I know you're going to be one to say you can manipulate stats, you can make stats say anything, but when you're comparing over a 16-game period and you have the equal number of games, they are in lockstep, and he's even better than Brett Favre.
Yeah, but I mean, those players played all the games in their first 5 years. They didn't have suspension for Uber incidents, and then a couple of years ago, he had
Brett Favre.
6 games.
Brett Favre whipped out his wing. Brett Favre had his share of issues.
How many games did he miss for that?
That was back before the NFL was cracking down on behavior.
Exactly. So I mean, you add those 8 to 10 games that Winston's missed those years. That's probably another I don't know.
I broke it down for you guys. I broke it down in the basis of 16, and I'll do the math for you. But I basically equated everything by making the denominator 16. So I did the math of interceptions per 16 games played, and the numbers are equal.
They're not equal when you have someone actually played 12 games versus actually who played 16 games.
I understand that, but you're not getting my point. My point is when you're looking at a rate of per 16 games, Jameis was throwing 1.3 interceptions, and per every 16 games played by Peyton Manning, he was throwing 1.3 interceptions. They're the same.
But Peyton Manning was relied on a lot more than what Jameis Winston's relied on.
Well, that's not true if Jameis Winston's throwing 5,100 yards.
He had no run game. I don't like comparing Peyton Manning. I can't compare him to a Hall of Famer. It just does not roll off my tongue well.
Well, then who's the appropriate comparison?
Eli Manning.
Eli Manning? I mean,
yeah.
Would you not take an Eli Manning? I would take 2 Super Bowls.
I don't know.
I haven't run the Eli Manning numbers, so maybe that's something we'll have to do offline. But Peyton Manning, I know it's... Were we thinking Peyton Manning was a Hall of Famer 5 years in, though? Like, we were all...
He was expected to be a Hall of Famer the day he was drafted.
Well, I understand, because we were all so excited about his performance at Tennessee and this and that. There was a big hype train there.
Yeah, given who his dad was and its whole connection to the NFL he had, I mean, Peyton Manning was hyped from day one. He was always hyped.
Right, so Jameis Winston didn't have the same hype. So why are we disappointed?
But Manning he never won a Heisman, did he?
Don't think so.
No, Winston did win a Heisman Trophy. But, Winston did have those turnover issues when he was in college as well. I know Peyton Manning got those addressed pretty quickly. I know he threw a lot of interceptions his first year for sure. Never hit 30. He never hit 30. You got to remember that. 30 is a big number. But, I mean, Jameis Winston, I think he is better than, some quarterbacks out there. But I just think that Buccaneers just need to erase that image. Jameis Winston's had his off-the-field issues coming into Tampa. He's had the Uber incident. I just think it's time to start fresh, get somebody with a new image, kind of change the culture a little bit. Not saying Winston is a bad leader, because from what you see, he seems to hype people up. But we want someone who doesn't like eat their fingers. We want someone who with a clean slate, someone who's actually, because I mean, I think Winston's not even allowed to go to elementary schools anymore after that incident he had at elementary school a few years ago. So I want someone who can actually go to elementary schools, who can actually be a face of the franchise. I feel like they tried to censor Winston a lot from being a face of the franchise, and I think we definitely need somebody that we can actually focus on.
I think that's a great point that you put in there. You don't, he does a good job at facing the media, and he will speak to his mistakes. But kind of talking about last press conferences, he definitely got a little defensive at his last press conference. Usually he's very apologetic, like, "Oh, my bad, interceptions," but he was kind of going after the media this time with the, "Hey, I'm balling. If you look at my numbers, if I just eliminate the interceptions," like, well, yeah, we know. That's why we're having this conversation. Kind of moving on to the last big end of season summary is the decisions that are going to have to be made by the Buccaneers GM, Jason Light. I'm hoping we find a way to bring back some of our defensive cornerstones. Ndamukong Suh, I think, had a quiet but effective season. I don't know if his stats really speak to how effective he was. And, I think it goes without saying Shaq and even JPP to a degree when he was able to play disruptive and made an impact.
Yeah, the defensive line was great. I mean, I don't know how we're going to be able to keep everybody there. I really mind. So, I mean, Vita Vea actually looked really well this year too. Can't forget about him. And then we have Levante David, another quiet guy who wasn't didn't really have too many highlights, but also effective.
He led the team in tackling.
Yeah,
as usual.
And who's the other guy? Devin White, very bright.
Oh, Devin White is going to be deadly. Having Devin White and Levante David's going to. Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited for the linebacker core. And
if we can just keep that intact, I think Shaq Barrett's going to be probably our main guy we really need to focus on based on his youth and everything like that. He's still a bit on the younger side. I know Ndamukong Suh and JP are more on the end of their career. If we can keep them, for like another year or two deal, maybe like a hometown discount like that, I say it's the way to go. But I still think that even though secondary's been showing a lot of improvement, I still think we definitely do need just like one more person. Either we're going through the draft, we're going through free agency. I think we just need like a solid safety there to be able to anchor that secondary. Right.
No, I think I agree 100% with that. I'm curious to see the direction that we're going to go and what the contract talks are going to look like. I think Rashad Perriman's also on due a new deal. I'm hoping he did enough to, maybe we can get a value deal for him at least, maybe another 1-year deal. Hopefully, I don't know what the market for Ndamukong Suh would look like with another year of age on him. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the big question is going to be, what do we do with Jameis? Is he going to end up with a tag, which I've heard he wouldn't be thrilled about. But I've also heard numbers of $30 million, which is hilarious to me, especially with Dak Prescott also having not signed his extension yet, and what the value of that's going to look like, especially after the season he kind of had this year with no playoffs. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm curious what do you think the market looks like for Jameis should we decide not to sign him? I mean, is there a team crazy enough to have him start?
Absolutely. I think there is a team. I think there's about 3 or 4 teams who can actually sign him. Probably give him like a 3-year, like about maybe even close to, I'd say between $28 and $30 million a year for 3 years, something maybe not fully guaranteed, but a good chunk of it guaranteed, to come in there and lead them. I mean, you got the Chargers. If they lose Rivers, not going to have anybody. And I don't think their draft is going to be high enough to be able to get like one of those top 2 quarterbacks. So I can see them signing them if the Bengals decide to go Chase Young in the draft, who's supposed to be one of the best defensive ends come into a draft. in a while, they will go with him. I mean, the Bengals could be crazy enough to sign him as well. So, I mean, I think there are a few teams out there, and it's going to be a market for him. I mean, when you're a quarterback and you have, given some success, as you've seen, Case Keenum got his deal with the Broncos. Mike Glennon even got a deal with the Bears a couple years ago. So I think there's definitely a market for them. I mean, definitely Jameis Winston would not be without a job. He will find a starting position role somewhere.
Right. So we'll keep that in mind, especially if any decisions are made or if we hear any rumors. We'll make sure to get on the podcast and have an episode about that. You probably won't hear from us too much until March as we preview free agency and see how we did. And then, of course, maybe a couple episodes getting ready for the draft in April and schedule release. And then we'll probably be quiet for the summer until it's camp season. And then we'll start previewing the Bucs then. So a couple more episodes maybe from us in the next few months. And then we'll take a nice little break from the Bucs. But then, of course, we're really excited to announce our next podcast project. We got it right here, ready to go. I don't know if as long as you're football fans, you're going to love it.
And the word is project as the key word, because we're going in here not knowing much about this.
Right. So we'll be doing research day and night in the upcoming weeks to get us ready for, yes, the Viper's Nest, with the XFL coming on board that week after the Super Bowl in February. Aaron Murray, who's the starting quarterback for the Tampa Bay Vipers, and I think Quentin Flowers, right? Quentin Flowers is part of that team.
He's listed as a running back on
right?
that team. Right?
Yeah, that we're already off to a good start. We know 2 out of the 50 whatever people on the Vipers, but promise you we will be.
We know the coach, old Bears coach, Mark Trestman.
Yeah, Mark Trestman. That's true. Promise you we will be the leading source of Vipers news. We're going to fill that hole in the market for the XFL, and we'll get probably our first episode in the next 2 weeks. I think we'll do a preview, kind of go over the roster, maybe just an overall preview of the XFL, rule changes, what to expect. Is the XFL going to stick around longer than the, what was it, the AU? I don't even remember what it was.
American Legion League. AAL or something like that.
Something. Where that lasted like 5 weeks, and then they couldn't pay anyone, so it dissolved.
No, AAF.
The AAF, yeah. The
American
Alliance of American Football Federation of America. I don't know what it was. But, I like the buzz that the XFL has built up already with the uniform release. Everything seems very clean cut and not as in your face as the last iteration of the XFL. And actually, Vince McMahon has actually distanced himself a little bit from it. He's mostly the financier. He's not the face of the league, if you will. And isn't it Andrew Luck's dad who's the commissioner of the XFL, right?
Oliver Luck is his name.
Yeah, Oliver Luck, I think, is the commissioner of the XFL. So there's always been those rumors that maybe Andrew Luck is going to pop up in the XFL before he returns to the NFL. But it's neither here nor there. So make sure you look for the Viper's Nest. We'll make an announcement on Twitter and our Facebook pages as well. And we'll probably have our first episode up in the next few weeks for the Tampa Bay Vipers season.
Yeah, we kick off the season week 1 at New York against the Guardians.
Well, what's exciting is that every game is nationally televised. So,
yeah, that's right.
Especially for people like me who are out of the market, I can actually watch the game, so I don't have to watch a 12-minute video to pretend that I watched the game like I did for most of the Buccaneers games this year. So be able to watch those live on ABC or whatever channels they're going to be putting them on. I'm excited for that.
Week 1, we're about a month away. February 9th is the kickoff, and it's against the Guardians. We're less than a month away. First home game is going to be here, Raymond James against the Houston Roughnecks on February 22nd. Might try to attend that game. Tickets are relatively priced pretty cheap, actually.
It's like $20.
Yeah, $20 for the end zone.
Yeah.
I think like $40 for the sides. I might try to attend that game and tell you guys, maybe for those who haven't been to a game or someone out of market, what it feels like to be at an XFL game. How it differs from an NFL game.
And with that brings us to the end of this episode of the Bucking Hangover. Thanks so much for sticking it out with us. been a great NFL season. We're excited that we actually made it through the season with this project. We kept with it. We got through the technical difficulties. We upgraded our computers. So thank you so much for being with us. Again, you'll see us here and there for the Bucking Hangover. Should any big Buccaneers news happen, we'll get the Viper's Nest going in the next few weeks. $10 sports will probably slow down as well. We'll shift the focus from NFL to basketball and hockey. And as we get into the summer and as the playoffs come for those sports and end, probably give that show a rest until the NFL season's back as well, because betting on baseball is really, really boring and weird, and we're not in that much into sports betting that we're betting on baseball every day. But then we'll have our the Thunderdome podcast will start back up again tomorrow as well, and we will do our random Balls, Brews, and Bros live shows just to talk about sports, what's going on, and check in with everyone in the sports world as NFL comes to an end and kind of we get into NBA action and NCAA gets into tournament play coming up soon, and then
March Madness.
March Madness as well. We'll throw out some brackets for us to analyze and take a look at. So that's been it for now. It's been Moose and MRod for Bucking Hangover. Go Bucs. We'll see you next year. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Balls, Brews, and Bros for Mike, at $10 Sports for me, and make sure you're looking for us on podcasting platforms everywhere. Have a great night. Take care.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks for sticking with us this whole season.